getting it sharp on a walk. What we're going to talk about this week is a little bit more about settings, because it's one of the last few videos we've done. I've been trying to avoid it, but I've sneaked ideas in, and it's all slowly going to come together. If you've been following through them, all the little pieces of the jigsaws start actually coming together. And this one is, if we're going out for a walk somewhere, or whether or not it's down to the beach, a local stately home, whatever, whether or not using a little compact camera, a bridge camera, or something a bit bigger, what we're going to run through today is getting those pictures sharp, right? Now I have a variety of lenses here, which I shall run through and demonstrate the ideas behind it. Speed, that is one of the key things of getting pictures sharp when we're out. One of the key things. Obviously there's what's something you'd call the exposure triangle, which you have three items: the ISO, the speed and the depth of field. Get all three of those right in the right combination, depending on what you're taking a picture of, and you'll get a nice, sharp, clear picture. It's what we all want, don't we? Right? So whether or not you're using a small compact camera, bridge camera or something a bit bigger, a lot of these things are going to vary on the lens which is on there. So first thing we talk about speed, because obviously if we're out for a walk, we're going to be moving around and you might not necessarily want a tripod. Travelling light is often the best thing to do if you can. If you're saying just going out for a walk, you don't want a big bag with loads of stuff in it. You just want to either take a camera, I mean it is quite big, but it's nothing compared to all the other bits to go with it. And sometimes having a big camera puts you off taking it anywhere. You end up taking a bit smaller, or you take your mobile phone. But if you've got one, and you know roughly what you're going to be doing if you're just going for a walk in the countryside, or you're going to a local stately home or a park or something, then this video is for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at speed first. Each lens will be different, whether or not on the front of your bridge camera or your compact camera. On the front, it'll actually tell you the lens size. I mean, for example, on this one, it says it's 4.7 to 32 mil, which is the actual lens size. Alternatively, you look at something a bit more. It's a 50 mil lens, right? And then we have a variance of other ones. There's a 100 mil lens. This is the common zoom lens, 70 to 300. Or 150 by 600, and you think, oh no, how am I going to keep these things steady if you're trying to hand holding them? But if the speed's fast enough, then everything else will come into play. But normally, say if you're just going to go walk somewhere, this one is a 24 by 70 lens, but it's quite a good quality lens and it's quite heavy. I've taken the battery pack off of it, so there's just a single battery in there. Obviously if you think you're going to need more, put another battery in your pocket. Don't need to carry more weight than necessary. So you're wondering now, where do we start? Well, what we start is with your lens, right? So it's a really simple example. It's a 50 mm lens, right? If you've got a crop sensor, which is, I double it generally. If you're hand holding a camera, it needs to be more than double. Obviously, if the object's moving in the picture, you might need to go faster, but this thing is the field of depth, which on here, it equally tells you what, but they normally only tell you what the minimum field of depth is. On this particular lens, it's 1.8. But normally they start a little bit higher up. I've got a sheet of paper here, and it says from 1.4 to f22. See that, right? Obviously, at both ends of the spectrum, you start having a little bit of distortion around the edge of the pictures. So ideally, what you want is near enough the middle of them. So whatever it is, say you got a 3.5 lens. I think these ones are 3.5 to f22. It will say on the edge what the minimum f number is. Where is it? They're sometimes a bit hard to find, but if you look around the lens, there it is. It will say on the side what the minimum f number is. Right. So what you do then is you need to know what the largest number is. They don't often tell you, but if you put it onto your camera, turn it on, and then go onto the f number, and then scroll across to the f number and wind it as far as it will go. So this one's telling me it will go up to f22, and if I vice versa, I can wind it down, and you can wind it down and it will tell you as well. So that one says 2.8. So what you do is you can either write on a bit of paper, or just, most of these you can really just do in your head after a while. So I've got f2.8 and f22. So if I cover up the first two, that only leaves you with these ones here. So it's going to be on here, you pick the middle one near enough, which is f8. So the sweet spot and the middle spot on this camera is going to be f8. Right? So I hear you cry. So what we're going to do if we've got a zoom lens, well, not just a fixed 50mm lens, 50mm prime lens. This one, which is on there, is a 24 to 70. So use the largest number, which is 70, and you double it, basically. So it's going to be 130. So you need about 160 of a second to get a nice. You know, you're going to walk around. If you've got 160 of a second, you're going to be able to take a reasonable picture, right? So this is a blank to start off with, obviously. So what I'm going to do, set the camera to f8. (160 a second), and that you can guarantee you're going to get a reasonably sharp, good picture. Right? It's irrelevant what the picture is of, but if you're going out for a walk, that is a good base point picture. Right, next thing, we've talked about those two factors. What about the third one, ISO? You're crying out, I hear. Camera is actually set on manual, and it's actually nice sometimes to use manual. Sometimes we've been talking about using speed and aperture priority, which have their place. Manual's got its place as well, right? You could use those first two figures, and you could not cheat. I'm not saying cheating, because it's not. You could either use auto ISO, which the camera is gonna correct to see what light's out there, but you're not in full control. But you're 2/3 the way through of mastering the controls on the camera, and you're still going to get a good sharp picture, irrelevant what you're taking a picture of. When we said about the speed, I said if you double the highest, so that way if you've actually zoomed out, that's the maximum speed you're going to need. So if you've actually going out somewhere and you zoom out as far as that's the speed is going to be spot on, right? Obviously if you zoomed in and it's 24, then realistically I only need a speed of 50 per second to get away with actually hand holding it. But go to the top end, because then you don't have to think about it. It's there, it's fixed in position. Obviously, if the object's not moving, then it's irrelevant what point of the focal the zooms in and out. It's exactly the same on a bridge camera. So if you look on your bridge camera and you look, see what the lens is, then you can work out what the minimum speed's going to be, add a little bit. The only thing is, if you use a 2/3 camera, not a crop sensor, a smaller one still, you need to increase that just a little bit. So you need to go up 1 or 2 stops faster, because the actual sensor is a little bit smaller. But vice versa, if you've got a full frame camera, you can come down a little bit and you can actually make it a little bit slower because the sensor's bigger. Right, so ISO. Right, if we set it on auto, it's going to do it all for you. Alternately, we could just look outside, see what the weather's like. It's nice and sunny today. I've actually closed the window curtains because otherwise you wouldn't see me at all. Right, so it's a nice sunny day. 100, 200. Obviously, if you're using manual ISO, using manual ISO, then if you take a picture, do just check first after you've taken a picture, because if you're going in and out, say, some woods, then the light is going to change because you'll be in shade and you'll be in dark. And that's the great thing, if you left it on auto, it's going to sense that and your camera will change accordingly. But if it's a dull day, you want to use manual ISO, so it's a dull day, go to 400. I mean, the cameras are so good on ISO now, the sensors on there will pick up a lot more light than you really expect. So if it's a dull day, 400 ISO, and you'll be fine. You've got no issues at all. Problem is, what you do if you're actually using manual and you've put that on 400 or say 800, then everything is going to be too bright. So it is a nice sunny day like it is outside. Go for a low one. Go for 100, because that is the controlling factor on those. But really, if you're just going out for a walk, stick the camera on auto ISO. Don't need to worry about it again. So you've got the speed setting in there, which is know what the minimum speed setting is going to be. So if you're moving the camera around and you only want to take the camera, then that's what you need. You've got the sweet spot, the F number, which is in the middle of that, and the field of depth is going to be somewhere. I mean, obviously all these things have a lot of factor. If you're going to take a close-up of a plant, then you might, this is the thing with like dedicated macro lenses and stuff. Or equally, the other end of the scale, if you're going to have to take some wildlife, whether or not, if you're using a 300mm lens, do exactly the same, but work out what the speed's going to be on it. Obviously it's going to be a bit faster, right? Or you could go to the other extreme, right? This beast here, right, this one here, 600mm lens, right? So if I was just going out to take some wildlife pictures, it start becoming heavy. But if you just put this lens on a camera body and you went out, it's not so bad if you're only carrying a camera with you and a spare battery. But I can take some really nice pictures still with this heavy lens, which is 600mm. So what we do is, as 600mm, we double it, because that's the top end of its scope, right? Because obviously, if you're further down the scale, 150, then there's going to be no shake at all. But equally, when you wind it out and you've got to 600mm, you need to double it. If you haven't doubled it, you're going to start getting shake in the picture, and it's right. So I go on this particular lens as a ballpoint figure. I always put 1,250 of a second on this lens, so I don't get any camera shake. I could hold this and I could probably take a really nice sharp picture of something half a mile away, handheld, 125th of a second in speed, right? But the issues are then is the amount of light coming into it and the field of depth, right? So field of depth on this one, the F number would be F8, F8, F10, but problem is as you go up further up, what happens to the F number is it gets smaller and it allows less light in it. So this is a big hurdle. As soon as you start using larger zoom lenses, it allows less light in, which is detrimental because you want as much light in as possible if you've got a bigger lens. With a small lens, it doesn't make so much difference because it is a small lens. You're fairly close in. But as soon as you have something bigger, then you start having issues. So the 300 is about what most people generally have as a standalone lens. You go out and you take pictures. So on that I would use, I actually come down a little bit if I can. Often it's auto ISO, 1200 speed, and f 7.1, 6.3 even, depends on what characteristics of the day is. If it's slightly dark and overcast, I want as much light in as possible. So I hope this hasn't confused you too much, but it's really to make you simplify a basic settings. You could go out and you could go for a walk and you could set your camera and look, if you've got different lenses, use different lenses, or even if you've got a bridge camera, look at the camera, right? So I'll just quickly recap what we're going to do. Look at your camera, see what type of lens it's got on there. It's written on all the front of all the lenses, right? So we're going to double the focal length, so whether or not it's 50, which would be 100 of a second, key first thing in, so you've got speed, which would be 100. And then we look to see what the F number is, because it plays a part in the triangle, and also it depends on where it starts, because it might be, each lens is slightly different. This one actually only starts at F 6.1, 6.3 that one starts at, so you have to try remembering these things. But if you use them, it comes in quite easily. And then, yeah, so you pick the middle one, if you can. Or sometimes, if it's too dark, you might have to step back one. So rather than using f8 on this lens, use 7.1. Allows a little bit more light in it, which does narrow the field of depth a little bit, but not a lot. It's quite a big, because it starts quite high up the scale, because some of them start like 2.8 and this one starts at 3.5, so it's just further up the scale. Bridge cameras and these little tiny cameras are just the same, you slip in your pocket. So you pick the middle one, near enough, auto ISO, and just go out and take some pictures. Don't worry about the settings, the rest are going to work. It's almost the same as putting your camera on that dreaded auto button, and the camera's going to work it out for itself. But this way, you start the camera on manual, and then what you can start, if you start realising what all these things do, then you're in control of the camera, not the camera in control of you. And it's just
seeing eyes of mine, what do you feel? sky. I don't know where we're gonna fly like you did sometimes. Seeing eyes of mine. Love, 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 I wanna be strong, strong. We're doing wrong, 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 but I'll try to fix it. Love, 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 I wanna be strong, strong. We're doing wrong, 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 but I'll change it, change it. Trees inside of me. In this desert I can look at you with love. Seeing all that I can long. Can you stay and I will grow? Grow the hanging gardens of Babylon. Love, love.
So hopefully this video, which we've just run, I'll just quickly run through quick ways, and they are the right ways to actually just go out and say, be able to take your camera body with you for a walk without all your other stuff. Decide what you're really going to be taking a picture of. I mean, if you're going for just a walk down the road, you probably don't want anything big heavy. Obviously if you've got a bridge camera, it's small enough anyway to carry, but sometimes you take it and think, oh, I'll take a picture, and it just doesn't come out right. Look at those two things, sit down for a second, and it doesn't actually take much effort and thought goes into it. So we're looking at the speed of the lens, see what the maximum is, double it by 2, double it, not double it by 2, just double it, right? Look at the f number, see what the f number is on your lens, find the middle of it, so we set that to the middle of it, camera and auto, every picture's going to come out. It's a no-brainer. The only thing left to you to do is find good compositions, look at the light, think of the rule of thirds, throw the rule of thirds out the window, but actually just get out there and take some pictures. If you're purposely doing some pictures in the house or something, and you're using like portrait pictures, and you're actually purposely using on a portrait prime lens, no zoom in a prime lens, they are fixed aperture, just look to see what they are. It's not, I mean, I have these two lenses here, and that's the main lens I tend to use, and I know that one inside out. If I'm doing some wildlife stuff, I would take that one with me. I might take that one as well. It's good for landscape because it's quite a wide one. So just a universal one. The other ones would stay at home. I wouldn't take them with me. As a key macro lens. So if you're doing anything close up, you tend not to take it out with you. It's just more weight to carry. Portrait lens, if you do portraits at home, or anything else in the garden. This is more like than most people have, a 300mm lens, 700 to 300. They're quite cheap, good lens, you know. They haven't got the reach. I mean, you can see the difference between the size-wise between the two bodies. Equally, if I take the lens cap off and I turn this one over, like the size difference, the amount of light it'll actually let in is considerably more, but it needs to be more. If you're doing something further away, it needs to gather more light. It's the same as a telescope. More light you can gather in, more you can see. But remember how big your eyes are. They're only quite small, so the size of one of these is probably as big, almost as big as both eyes. So get out there, whether or not you've got a bridge camera or something a bit bigger, dust it off, get out there, take some pictures, just go for a walk and enjoy yourself. The sun's coming, even if it's just around the garden, or using a bridge camera. Love to see some pictures you've taken this week, and try using this technique. it's the be all, not the be end and end all, but it's a good ballpoint part to start with. The pictures are all going to come out. They're going to be sharp. They're going to be crisp. If you do it in that rule, then they're going to get some nice, sharp, crisp pictures. And if you come back from a walk and you've taken some pictures and they all come out nice, then it will encourage you to go out again and take some more pictures. Often, if I take pictures, I take them slightly wide, so it can always give me an opportunity to crop it. Or sometimes you get home and then you don't see what's in there's something else in the picture, or you can move it over a little bit. So that's worth doing. So I'd like to see what you come up with. Hope this video has been alright for you.